Hi again. We are going to go into part three of Julie of the Wolves. So the last thing that happened was the little puppies were running up to Amarok, and Amarok was comforting them. And Mayax, she was trying to figure out how to talk with the wolves, how to communicate with them. Any fear Mayax had of the wolves was dispelled by their affection for each other. They were friendly animals and so devoted to Amarok that she needed only be accepted by him to be accepted by all. She even knew how to achieve this: bite him under the chin. But how was she going to do that? She studied the pups, hoping they had a simpler way of expressing their love for him. The black puppy approached the leader, sat, and lay down and wagged his tail vigorously. He gazed up at Amarok in pure adoration, and the royal eyes softened. Well, that's what I'm doing, Mayax thought. She called to Amarok. I'm lying down gazing at you too, but you don't look at me that way. When all the puppies were wagging his praises, Amarok yipped, hit a high note, and crooned. As his voice rose and fell, the other adults sang out and the puppies yipped and bounced. The song ended abruptly. Amarok rose and trotted swiftly down the slope. Nails followed. Trying to get you guys out of the sun. Okay. Nails followed, and behind him ran Silver, then Jello. But Jello did not run far. Silver turned and looked him straight in the eye. She pressed her ears forward aggressively and lifted her tail. With that, Jello went back to the puppies, and the three sped away like dark birds. Mayax hunched forward on her elbows, the better to see and learn. She now knew how to be a good puppy, pay tribute to the leader, and even to be a leader by biting others on top of the nose. She also knew how to tell Jello to babysit. If only she had big ears and a tail, she could lecture and talk to them all. Flapping her hands on her head for ears, she flattened her fingers to make friends, pulled them together and back to express fear, and shot them forward to display her aggression and dominance. Then she folded her arms and studied the puppies again. The black one greeted Jello by tackling his feet. Another jumped on his tail, and before he could discipline either, all five were upon him. He rolled and tumbled with them for almost an hour. Then he ran down the slope, turned, and stopped. The pursuing pups plowed into him, tumbled, fell, and lay still. During a minute of surprised recovery, there was no action. Then the black pup flashed his tail like a semaphore signal, and they all jumped on Jello again. Mayax rolled over and laughed aloud. That's funny. They're really like kids. When she looked back, Jello's tongue was hanging from his mouth and his sides were heaving. 4 of the puppies had collapsed at his feet and were asleep. Jello flopped down too, but the black pup still looked around. He was not the least bit tired. Mayax watched him, for there was something special about him. He ran to the top of the den and barked. The smallest pup, whom Mayax called Sister, lifted her head, saw her favorite brother in action, and, struggling to her feet, followed him devotedly. While they romped, Jello took the opportunity to rest behind a clump of sedge, a moisture-loving plant of the tundra. But hardly was he settled before a pup tracked him to his hideout and pounced on him. Jello narrowed his eyes, pressed his ears forward, and showed his teeth. I know what you're saying, she called to him. You're saying, lie down. The puppy lay down, and Mayax got on all fours and looked for the nearest pup to speak to. It was Sister. Ooh, she whined, and then Sister turned around. Julie narrowed her eyes and showed her white teeth. Obediently, Sister lay down. I'm talking wolf! I'm talking wolf! Mayax clapped, and tossing her head like a pup, crawled in a happy circle. As she was coming back, she saw all 5 puppies sitting in a row watching her, their heads cocked in curiosity. Boldly, the black pup came toward her, his fat backside swinging as he trotted to the bottom of her frost heave and barked. You are very fearless and very smart, she said. Now I know why you are special. You are wealthy and the leader of the puppies. There is no doubt what you'll grow up to be. So I shall name you after my father, Kapujin, and I shall call you Kapu for short. Kapu wrinkled his brow and turned an ear to tune in more acutely on her voice. You don't understand, do you? Hardly had she spoken than his tail went up, his mouth opened slightly, and he fairly grinned. Eli, she gasped. You do understand. And that scares me. She perched on her heels. Jello whined an undulating note, and Kapu turned back to the den. Myax imitated the call to come home. Kapu looked back over his shoulder in surprise. She giggled. He wagged his tail and jumped on Jello. She clapped her hands and settled down to watch this language of jumps and tumbles, elated that she was at last breaking the wolf code. After a long time, she decided they were not talking, but roughhousing, and so she started home. Later, she changed her mind. Roughhousing was very important to wolves. It occupied almost the entire night for the pups. Eli, okay, she said. I'll learn to roughhouse. Maybe then you'll accept me and feed me. She pranced, jumped, and whimpered. She growled, snarled, and rolled. But nobody came to roughhouse. Sliding back to her camp, she heard the grass swish and looked up to see Amarok and his hunters sweep around her frost heave and stop about 5 feet away. She could smell the sweet scent of their fur. The hairs on her neck rose and her eyes widened. Amarok's ears went forward aggressively, and she remembered that wide eyes meant fear to him. It was not good to show him she was afraid. Animals attacked the fearful. She tried to narrow them, but remembered that was not right either. Narrowed eyes were mean. In desperation, she recalled that Kapu had moved forward when challenged. She pranced right up to Amarok. Her heart beat furiously as she grunt whined the sound of the puppy begging for adoration, for attention. Then she got down on her belly and gazed at him with fondness. The great wolf backed up and avoided her eyes. She had done something wrong, perhaps even offended him. Some slight gesture that meant nothing to her had apparently meant something to the wolf. His ears shot forward angrily, and it seemed all was lost. She wanted to get up and run, but she gathered her courage and pranced closer to him. Swiftly, she patted him under the chin. The signal went off. It sped through his body and triggered emotions of love. Amarok's ears flattened and his tail wagged in friendship. He could not react in any other way to the chin pat, for the roots of this signal lay deep in wolf history. It was inherited from generations and generations of leaders before him. As his eyes softened, the sweet odor of ambrosia arose from the gland on the top of his tail, and she was drenched lightly in wolf scent. Myax was one of the pack. All through the sunny night, she waited for Amarok to come home with food for her and the pups. When at last she saw him on the horizon, she got down on all fours and crawled to her lookout. He carried no food. Aye, she cried. The pups must be nursing. That's why there's no meat. Slumping back on her heels, she thought about this. Then she thought again. You can't be nursing, she said to Kapu, and plunked her hands on her hips. Silver growls when you suckle and drives you away. Kapu twisted his ears at the sound of her voice. Okay, she called to him. Where are you getting the food that makes you so fat? He ignored her, concentrating on Silver and Nails, who were coming slowly home from the hunt. Myax went back to her pot and stuffed on the cold raw moss until her stomach felt full, if not satisfied. Then she crawled into her cozy home in the hope that sleep would soothe her hunger. She smoothed the silver hairs of her beautiful wedding parka, then carefully took it off and rolled it up. Placing it and her fur pants in a bag made of whale bladder, She tied it securely so that no moisture would dampen her clothes while she slept. This she had learned in childhood, and it was one of the old Eskimo ways that she liked, perhaps the only one. She had never violated it, even in the warm gas-heated house in Barrow, for damp clothes could mean death in the Arctic. When her outer garments were put away, she took off the bright red tights her mother-in-law had bought for her at the American store in Barrow. Walking to the pond, she rinsed them and laid them in the sun. The cool air struck her naked body. She shivered and was glad that she had done one thing right. She had worn her winter clothes, not her light summer kusbuk, the woman's dress. The wind gusted. Mayak scrambled through the low door and slid into her sleeping skin. The silken softness of the rabbit fur embraced her, and she pulled the hood around her face so that only her nose was exposed. The fur captured her warm breath, held it against her face, and she became her own radiant stove. In this cozy micro-world, she forgot her hunger and recalled what she already knew about wolves so that she could put it together with what she had observed. Wolves are shy, Kapujin had said, and they desert their dens if discovered by man. Yet this pack had not. Did Amarok not know she was human? Perhaps not. She had never walked in his presence. The two-legged signal of man to wild animals. On the other hand, he must know. Kapujin had said that with one sniff, a wolf knew if you were male or female, adult or child, if you were hunting or not hunting, even if you were happy or sad. She concluded that Amarok tolerated her because she was young, had no gun, and was sad, a lost child. She next considered Nails. Who was he? Amarok's dependable friend, that was true. Yet she suspected he was even more than that, a spiritual father of the pups. Nails took orders from Amarok, but stayed close to Silver and the little wolves. He was father when their real father was busy. He was Amarok's serious partner. But Jello? Who was he? Where had he come from? Was he a pup of a previous year? Or had he joined the pack just as she had, by soliciting Amarok for membership in his tribe? There was so much to learn about her family. Mayax did not know how long she slept, for midnight was almost as bright as noon, and it was difficult to judge the passing of time. It did not matter, however. Time in the Arctic was the rhythm of life. The wolf pups were barking their excited yippoo that rang out over the hour of end of the hunt. The pack was coming home. With visions of caribou stew in her head, she got out of her sleeping skin and reached for her clothes. That's the end of the reading today.